aside from the defense of the three-point shot, is there anything different that you would address your team about, or that we could possibly ask you today about the seventh game that's any different than when you played and were getting ready for seventh games in your playing time? And that 35, 40 years ago.
Don't count the years, Bob, for crying out loud.
I was there too. Sorry.
I remember we had a dialogue at one time about Payne, who played for Kentucky, if you remember that. The access that we have to not only instant replay and video work is the only thing that changes up the angles and the things that we say. However, going into Game 7 versus the Celtics in 1973, we had, tape developed overnight, or film, I should say. It's regular film, and JoJo White was punishing us with high screen rolls, and at a pivotal moment in the film study that we were doing back in those days, the same old thing was happening. Dean Meminger was saying, "I don't get any help," and Red Holzman barked at him, "The job's got to get done. One way or the other, the job has to get done." As you know, Dean Meminger had the game of his life in the seventh game. So yeah, it's not any different. The job has to get done.
Phil, a lot has been made about Kobe's motivations in the big picture. Do you feel that he really wants to catch Magic and eventually Michael with championships?
It's not at the front of his mind. That's not what the big issue is. It's about his personality. It's about winning. And I think in retrospect, he's going to see that at some point. At one point when I first got to the Lakers, I got a call from Jerry West, who was, vice president, player personnel director at that time. And he said, I'd like to tell you I had a long conversation with Kobe. And he wanted to know how both Elgin and I were capable of scoring close to 30 points or more a game at that level of basketball at that time. And it's going to be so difficult for him to score 20 points with Shaq scoring the kind of points he's scoring at the time, which he was probably scoring 29 or so points a game. So at that time, I think in his career at 21, which was the age Kobe was at that time, he was very concerned about his mortality and how history is going to look at him as a basketball player. At this time, I don't think it's in the back of his mind that he has to catch Magic or he has to catch Michael or anything else. He wants to win. He wants to win. It's what the effort's worth for him to do what he has to go through to play this game.
Bill, you'll hear players sometimes talk about games like this, and you treat it like another game. But by definition, Game 7 of the NBA Finals is unlike any other game that you can play. How do you engage that aspect of it with your team, and confront that issue without it becoming sort of overwhelming?
It's basketball, and that's the thing that, when you say it's still a game, you have to go through the same execution things. You may be moving at a faster rate. You may be playing at a quicker elevation, spirit, etc. But if you're not going to be able to do the most basic things, if you come out of your skin, in other words, and you're not in character, then things are going to happen awry. They're not going to go right for you. So you have to stay in character, even though it's not just a game. It's a different type of a game, but it's still something that you have to be able to confront and hold your composure in.
Do you feel like players are better off acknowledging the difference in the game rather than trying to pretend that it's not that way?
Well, I like the fact that they're trying to remember that, what the game's about. The game's about the basic things, being able to dribble the ball and shoot the ball and, correctly play the game. So those are the things I think is important. They'll acknowledge it, in the deeper sense. Sleep's a little bit different the night before, or whatever. There's more animation. Your nervous system is more activated. Those things are all part of the part and parcel of what you do. But it's being able to contain that and still play with that energy that's the important thing.
So when these two teams met a couple of years ago and there was all the talk of Lakers-Celtics rivalry, it probably didn't mean too much to these guys. That predates them by a long shot.
Yes.
Now that they've met twice in a 3-year span, do you think that, and going 7 games besides in this series, do you think that that's kind of now embedded in these teams a little bit? And can you see as you look at the two squads, a possibility of this maybe repeating again over the next year or two?
You know, who can tell? This is a relatively young team that we have. Obviously, our two leaders, Fish and Kobe, are, you know, a lot of experience for them, but we have a relatively young team. They have a team that's considerably older with Allen and obviously, you know, Garnett, who've been in this fray a little bit longer than our guys have been. But, you know, it's possible. These teams have risen to the top again through, you know, really dedicated defense and work, and I think it's why these two teams are here in the finals.
And as to the rivalry, do you feel like it's now kind of embedded in these two teams in this generation that's
Yeah, I
beyond
guess
this?
it's going to be another decade that people look back and see that formation of this rivalry again. It's, you know, the 90s was missed, the 80s, you know, in the 70s was missed, but the 60s was, 60s and the 80s were big decades, and it seems to skip a decade, doesn't it?